Or I
suicide.
yeah, pretty much. I just left Beverly's,
Oh,
old Beverly's.
you go by yourself?
Yeah. After dropping the cab off at Vinny and Michaela's, I was like, I have worked myself up an appetite, so I'm gonna go to fucking Bev's. And
Hell
got
yeah.
the old farmer's daughter, the old reliable.
Yeah, you know that's my favorite.
Yeah, if you're in Oklahoma City and you're listening to this right now and you don't know where to get a good old fashioned American diner experience, 24 hours, hun, shug, then head on down to Beverly's
I've
Pancake
definitely been
House.
called Shug at
Yeah,
Beverly before.
yeah, dude, same.
And honey, lots of honey.
Yep. I thought
It's
about
good.
getting a piece of pie today, but like go real old school, get some coffee and some pie, but
Yeah,
I had two blueberry pancakes, so I was like, I've had enough sweets.
yeah. Dude, the Southern food, it's the Bible Belt food in general.
Dude, it's the shit.
It takes a heavy toll on one's form.
Yeah,
It's
that's for sure.
certain.
But
If
it's
you have
good
that
for
kind
the
of diet,
soul. It's good for the soul.
it's good for the soul. See, that's what they say because
Yeah. Ain't
they're
good
they're
for the
thinking the
heart.
one thing it's good for.
Yeah, yeah. Not good for the heart, not good for the gut,
Yeah, not good for the brain.
but
But
great for the soul.
no, you gotta have that stuff.
It was
People
just one of
say,
those days. It was one of those days where I was just like, wow, I had a shitty day already. How can I feel better? Some decaf coffee, stack of pancakes, hash browns, an egg, you know? Like,
"Oh yeah." Well, people say like there actually is an element of indulging yourself in that kind of way. Like the example is always Warren Buffett because he eats McDonald's every morning or something, gets like bacon, egg, and cheese, and he drinks a Coke every day. And it's like he's super old, so but I don't know. And there's like the stereotype of the old dude that smokes but still lives till he's like 95 or something like that.
a lot of Asians, dude. A lot of Asians are that way too. Like Chinese. That's actually when COVID first started happening, a lot of Chinese, like people that are our age and younger, were trying to convince their mainland family like it's real and they need to quit smoking and everything. And much
Mm.
like here, a lot of the parents and older generations were like, nah, whatever, fuck that, like we've been smoking for centuries, why would we stop now? And like
Well, isn't it like Thailand where there aren't the same cigarette age laws and they like sell cigarettes outside of schools,
oh, I'm
like
sure.
high schoolers?
I don't know if it's Thailand, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Thailand. I'm just pulling that out of my ass, but
I mean, there's plenty of countries that if you're tall as the bar, then you can drink. So I wouldn't be surprised, with that logic, I wouldn't be surprised that some countries allow children to smoke cigarettes.
yeah.
And I wonder if their cigarettes are cleaner than ours technically. Like maybe they don't
I
have
don't
the
know.
same type of chemicals or whatever.
What kind of difference would that really make? See, I
Um,
feel like it's always a like a cultural thing or like how you're raised because if you just give your kids cigarettes, if you just give your kids cigarettes, but like
Some
really,
big
if you
old
were
Camel
like given
Y.
if you were given it in a certain context and told that like this, like this isn't a regular thing to do, but like here, it's something in life. A lot of people like it, your
Yeah.
dad enjoys it, whatever.
Right, right.
Like I don't know, maybe you would actually think it's ridiculous to smoke like 5 times a day.
Yeah, no,
Or like,
I think if you give kids the option and you show them like what there is in the world and you just talk to them like they can understand it cuz they totally can, then the chances of them like I take drinking for example, like my dad let me drink beer when I was 16, 17, 18.
yeah.
Like
And that's pretty, I don't know, pretty old.
I mean,
Like supervised.
I drank plenty without their supervision. I knew how to get it on my own, but like he would let me have one at a cookout that we were having or something. Like one with my like that was the drink of choice for my meal. Was like a Heineken beer or something. Now that I'm 27 and when I turned 21, I didn't want to go and like have a big drinking party. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't that big of a deal, really. Like I had already had alcohol. Like it just I feel like it becomes less of a problem for future you if you're just exposed to it at an early age in a healthy environment, one that doesn't provide like some kind of trauma that you're going to start fixing quote unquote with the alcohol, you know.
Yeah.
And you have an adult there to be like, yeah, you shouldn't use this as like a escape. This is just something, if you like it, go ahead and try it. You know, you can enjoy it when you get older.
Yeah. No, and I feel like that's the classic example. Like you let your kids experiment with alcohol a little bit and get over the novelty and just make it not such a dogma or a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And and then when they turn 21, they don't feel like they have to just go loose and experiment to the extremes, or I don't know. And that's, that's a pretty little example. It probably doesn't always work out like that,
Yeah, everything's
but
situational. I mean,
but
but
still there's something to just like trusting your kids or like not trying to hide
yeah,
that stuff from them.
yeah. I also understood the price of alcohol, like how much it cost at a young age, because my dad would make me buy it. So what he would do is he would like have me give him money, and then he would go buy like a 6 pack or like a, I don't know, if he could find it, a single like beer or something, and a couple of them, like three or four. But I would pay for it, and then he would hide them or like keep them stashed away, or I couldn't find them or anything. And that's how we did that whole transaction. And so
Yeah.
I understood like beer can get expensive. So then it was
Yeah.
like sometimes even when you're young, you're like, I don't want to spend that much money to get, you know, even shitty beer, because when I was younger, craft beer wasn't that popular. So it was all just like shitty Corona and Heineken and all that, like,
Yeah.
which are still beers I love today. But um, yeah, I don't drink as much anymore. Like, I have a beer, like maybe two or three at a show, but like, other than that,
Well, that's the thing is like it's something it's a special event. It's not the norm.
exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's like that basic kind of self-governing to, I don't know, be able to indulge in things and not have them take over your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a basic form of self-governing. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately that like I think, well, like my brothers, and well, I'll just say that my family has like a lot of history and roots of addiction. And once you really think a lot about addiction and like what it is at its base, when you take away the adjectives like the substances, the particular substances or behaviors, or like all the connotations, and you just think about what it is at its root, then you realize that a lot of people are just functioning addicts.
Oh yeah.
Like I was thinking recently, most modern people are functioning addicts.
I think our country and most things were built on the backs of functioning addicts. Even the
Yeah,
workforce enforces like a functioning addict mentality with coffee, cigarettes, like maybe not cigarettes as much anymore, but
that used
um,
to be a dominant part of like business culture
yeah,
almost though. It's
tobacco,
cigarettes.
cigars, and coffee and
Yeah,
scotch.
but really all sorts of substances and behaviors, and like that's normal. So there's something about to it that's like very normal and goes far back in time, like humans and even animals like using substances to basically just regulate their own consciousness or have like a lever that they can pull.
That's how coffee was discovered, I think, actually. There were like goats that were eating it, and farmers were noticing their goats were getting like this. I heard this from someone else. So if you Google this and it's completely wrong, then then
No, I like
don't.
that. I like that story
But
though.
they
Like goats are getting
noticed.
too hype, man.
Yeah, I mean, they noticed their goats were getting like anxious. Like they were getting more prone to being like just jittery and scared of everything all the time. And they're like, this doesn't make sense. They found berries they were eating turned out to be cocoa nut, like whatever they are, the seeds or whatever the fuck, beans. That's it, beans.
Yeah.
Coffee beans, not cocoa beans. Yeah, at least that's what I
You know,
think.
cocoa leaves.
I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh.
I just work here.
But no, yeah, like coffee's a big one. Coffee's my big indulgence,
Hmm.
definitely.
Dude,
But
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But
no,
my like I don't drink a lot of coffee anymore, and if I do, it's decaf. Both times I've been to Beverly's in the past month, I've had decaf coffee. I still love black coffee so much, and then I forgot decaf was even a thing. So I've been enjoying that.
so
But
you're like not doing caffeine
I'm
still.
trying. Yeah, the only caffeine I have is soda, and I have a soda, which I'm getting to another point. I have an addiction that we could talk about here in a little bit, but it does have to do with my soda indulgence. I just like shitty food. I'm addicted to shitty, which I mean a lot of people are, but like that I'm
Yeah,
noticing that's a really big problem in my life. Like I stress eat a lot. Like today, that's why I went to Beverly's. I was stressed out and I was like, I need some coffee. I need the smell and taste of coffee and like shitty, greasy breakfast food.
yeah.
And I feel a lot better. And that it's probably not a good thing, but um, yeah, having coffee, I have to have it at like 7 a.m. now after not having it. And I miss it so much. But if I drink it past like 10 a.m., I'm up. I'm up all night until like 4 a.m. the next day.
Damn.
And so coffee really is that like America's prime indulgence. Like, and you think about Starbucks too, the dominant coffee.
Dude,
They're
people legit spend an hour in Starbucks line like every day.
dude.
Like so many people do that.
I've turned
That's nuts to
around
me.
at I've turned around in more Starbucks lines than I have stood in line for them. Like inside and through the drive-through, I've been like, nope, I'm getting the fuck out of here. This is so stupid. I'm about to pay like $5.95 for a cup of coffee that fucking big, and I'm gonna sit in a line that takes 45 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's
yeah,
addict
good.
behavior though, and that's what's
No, it's yeah, and all of most of the commodities that people are addicted to, they're pumping in price.
mm-hmm.
Except for sugar. Sugar and like I guess corn, wheat.
It's because they can
Uh,
make sugar.
well, sugar is actually subsidized by the government in a weird way through being through corn being subsidized
Mm.
because like lots of corn is subsidized, and then most sugar that's in things is high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, isn't like most of our shit just made from like corn and fucking what's it called? Like soybeans and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of stuff: corn, soybeans, wheat.
Things that
Yeah,
aren't
that's
good
a
for you.
huge portion right there. You know, it's complicated. I don't fully understand it, but at least in the proportions that we eat it, in the context that we eat it, it's clear like that when you get like they have these little snacks at my work, put out snacks every day, and sometimes you just be getting like they have like white cheddar popcorn puffs,
Mm-hmm.
and you just pull it out and it's just this like puffed corn like
Styrofoam.
industry. Yeah, yeah, you would pack a computer in a box with that stuff with just cheese powder on it, and you're like, man, this isn't uh, this isn't stuff. This isn't natural.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. It's I think Plato's the one that said, "Let food be thy medicine,"
Mm.
and we definitely like there's deep insight in that it's a respect for nature also. The like nature has really complex properties that we've been consuming and like almost co-evolved with for a long time, and you compare that to just a corn puff.
Right.
uh
Chemically made corn puff.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, the price of coffee, the price of cigarettes.
Oh, we got a visitor again.
Oh yeah, I see him back there.
Kibby.
Mr. Yeah, all those things really going up. Have you heard people talking about the price of lumber?
Oh, yes. Tyler mentioned it like
Yeah,
a month ago or something. A while ago.
yeah, lumber's gone up like 500 plus percent or something. I don't know where
Whoa.
it's at exactly now, but it got to the point where people were starting to steal lumber.
Damn.
It's this is kind of a good, I guess, good little tidbits to throw in for what we're going to talk about later, which is basically just money and what is money,
Mm.
which is a subject I love. But yeah, before then, is any cool stories
I mean,
this week?
it's not that cool, but I have a story.
Yeah.
uh,
Wait, is it your new job title? Have you started that?
oh no, I'm gonna save that for the future.
Okay.
But I am working in the weed industry, so that's cool. That's a cool
Yeah,
story.
the your new job title is probably one of the coolest.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna get some more thoughts and some more experience this week, and then I'll be down to talk about that for
Yeah.
sure. But I was just gonna mention the place that all of our bands practice pretty much had a fire in the break room of the practice area of the practice spot. So it's not a cool story, but it's a story regardless.
Was this last night?
I
Or
actually don't know when it happened. I think it was in the past 2 or 3 days, maybe 2 days ago. But I'm thinking what happened is someone left a cigarette out or threw a cigarette away that was still
yeah,
lit.
speaking of cigarettes.
Right. Uh, yeah, threw a cigarette away in the trash can maybe, or like put it in the ashtray and they dumped the ashtray into the trash can. They said they had an arson investigation too, though.
Damn.
So like maybe it was arson. I don't really know. Um, yeah, I mean every single room has minor smoke damage, so that kind of fucking that actually really sucks for everyone.
Yeah, I'm glad all of our shit didn't burn down though, because
Yeah.
I have most of my big pieces of equipment
Yep.
in there.
And that's what I today I wiped them for any of you listening. If you have smoke damage, I guess wipe it down with white vinegar, because that seemed to clean it off for the most part. Um, didn't seem to leave any discolorization, or it doesn't smell like white vinegar now. It just it smells like really shitty plastic barbecue. Like if you were to get a slack of plastic ribs and slather it, if you 3D printed a rack of ribs and
Or you
slathered
just
it,
don't take them out of the package.
yeah, don't take them out, and you slather that in barbecue sauce and let it, even sit overnight, and then you throw it on the grill and you forget about it. That's what it probably smells like. It's really unpleasant.
Nice.
Um, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy. There's there's not a ton of fires in Oklahoma, but obviously if you leave a cigarette out around a bunch of flammable shit, there was just up here in Utah, it was smoky for like a week from the California fires happening again.
well, that's what's crazy is that
Just
here,
like blows through, then leaves, blows away.
that's insane. It like it made me so mad though because the wettest year that Oklahoma has, we have a contained indoor man-made fire.
Yeah.
Like of all fucking years, um, we've not had that many fires at all this year because it's just been wet.
Yeah.
E-
Dude,
that w-
speaking of contained fires, See the show?
Whoa. Uh-uh.
This is from the Richard Branson like flight to space thing. This is what I was gonna bring up. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. For y'all listening, we're looking at Unity 22 space flight live stream on YouTube right now.
Well,
Virgin
this was live
Galactic.
streamed on
Oh,
July
it
11th.
already did it already go?
Hmm.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay, I see.
it's like this plane unit with two different fuselage,
Mm,
and it's carrying like the actual rocket
okay.
ship that kind of looks like a jet. I'm gonna see if it shows. That's like from the side, the
Mm,
fuselage.
mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Oh, it's
that's
got people in there.
Richard Branson. Do you know who Richard Branson is?
Huh.
He's like a billionaire.
Oh, so it's his private company?
Yeah, it's Virgin Galactic.
Okay.
But it was I thought this story was interesting because he like him and Virgin Galactic like they've been working on their own like space program where it's like private trips to
Mm,
space, like quick private trips, and they're like racing with Jeff Bezos's company, which I think is Blue Origin or something like that. And they launched this like right before, like I think Jeff Bezos's company is supposed to go to space this month sometime,
mm.
and they wanted to be first, I guess, so they launched it first.
Damn.
But um,
So the question is, when do they start when does the bloodshed start happening between these two companies? Between these two
I mean,
billionaires?
I don't know if they're exactly competing. I don't know what Blue Origin is doing, but for Virgin Galactic, they've already pre-sold like 250 tickets for
Wow.
250,000 each.
Jesus.
Maybe it's more tickets than that. I'm not sure, but each ticket is $250,000. And yeah, you get like in 2 hour round trip flight, like up into space for a little while and then back down.
Man,
Uh,
that's like that's so much fucking money. That's ridiculous.
it's definitely like you have to have a few million in order to be able to afford that unless you're just spending like all your life savings on it.
He's not even looking out the window. This guy.
I
Man,
think they're on the launch. Well, no, it hasn't gone off. Oh, yeah, that's what
I'd
it
be
looks
looking
like.
out the window. That seems like a good time.
Well, he does. They like get up in space and he like floats around for a minute. That was the clip that everyone saw. But the hope is to bring down the price of space flight eventually, is
Right.
what they're saying. But it was just interesting because like if you were paying attention to the news, like I don't know, they just spun this whole thing as like billionaires are trying to flex on each other.
Mm.
And I don't know, they're making it about like the money, and even people were saying that it's wrong that like like if someone outside of a government can go to space, then that's a sign that stuff is bad. And
Mm.
I don't know, I hate that kind of reasoning. Like I think it's good anytime people go to space or advance the technology, like advance the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see when this thing launches from the fuselage. Oh,
There it goes.
that looks crazy. But yeah, pretty crazy. So
Well, it's
now
also like
rich people are going to space.
people act like there's only like 2 or 3 billionaires in the world. Also,
Yeah,
like they act like these are the only ones.
yeah, and that's where it's kind of dumb, where they're like, this space exploration is a sign that things are broken, when really there's like 999 other billionaires that are quiet and no one knows their names.
Hmm.
And what are they doing? Like, they're in business behind closed doors and they're not in the popular eye to even be criticized, but oftentimes they might be the ones doing the most sketchy shit.
Yeah.
And with what we're going to talk about later, Like central bankers are a perfect example of those people kind of behind closed doors. Uh, did your parents and teachers ever teach you about money?
Oh yeah, man.
You ever learn about money in school? Like
Good old Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey, that's what.
Yeah, man. I had a finance class. I didn't learn shit.
Yeah.
I learned that you weren't supposed to get a credit card and that you're supposed to do a bunch of other shit. I can't remember. Yeah, if anyone else took Dave Ramsey, let us know.
I know that whole theory. It's just, a diversified portfolio. Don't take out any debt and
Yeah.
save X% of your money. Yeah.
Yep.
It's it's interesting. I was pretty curious about money when I was like a little kid, but I never learned about it. Like really much, like you learn about finance, you learn about, maybe economics, maybe some bit of economics, but you're always learning like layers above what money actually is, or like basically what I would call the first principles. But um, I remember when I was like 10, I would have these imaginations of like, well, you want to buy all this stuff. Like once you figure out, what money is in the basic way, like you buy things with money, your parents are the ones that have money and they go to the grocery store. Like maybe you look around Sam's and you see all the trampolines and like the go-karts
Right.
and you're like, oh, what if I had unlimited money to like buy all this stuff? What if I could buy the whole store?
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine like, what if I had a money printer, like just to print unlimited dollars? And like I remember having that imagination and kind of uh, thinking that I could just print money forever and like buy everything up,
Mm-hmm.
and that I wouldn't affect anything. It's not really intuitive if you think that like, what if someone did have a money printer? Like, what would that actually do? And little did I know that that kind of childhood idea actually has a lot of
Like
grounding,
weight to it in
yeah,
reality of this
to reality,
country.
and a lot of countries in the past as well.
Yeah.
But basically, since 2017, I've been just falling down the rabbit hole, getting into Bitcoin. It's like one of the most important kind of technologies and areas of inquiry
Mm-hmm.
that I've discovered as an adult. And it kind of hits right at the deepest history of money and like what money is and what free trade is and how we even got to where we are in a lot of ways. And it's a really deep and cool topic. And I think that a lot of economics and finance is boring actually.
Mm.
Like they've almost put a bunch of labels and abstractions onto it to obscure what's really there.
I
And
think
kind
it's
of
really
what,
confusing for a lot of younger people too. Maybe not younger, probably like mid 20s.
yeah.
Maybe not, maybe late 20s now.
Well, it's unless you have the right kind of upbringing, because like financial literacy, they'll say, which I would argue in a lot of ways, financial literacy is really just how well do you understand the system given to you, because it's always conditional.
Yeah.
You would think that just there could be a solid good rule for money, like save your money. And yeah, that's a good rule, but if you save cash in certain times, like if you just save the currency that you're given from your government, you might just be getting poor,
Right.
like super
Right.
poor over time. Like if you do that in Venezuela, you over the last 10 years, even if you were making tons of money, you just would have been getting poorer and poorer. So then you're in a scenario where you're like, I have to put my money in other places. Where do I even put it?
Mm.
And so kids, there's a really popular like finance self-help book called Rich Dad Poor Dad that just kind of talks about this idea of like this guy who had a friend's dad who was like rich and successful and taught him certain things versus his own dad
Mm-hmm.
who had a certain mindset, you know. And so there's the kind of this idea of like you can teach someone when they're young to understand the market and understand where good places to put money, but still this is all like an abstraction because it's all like on our current system, which where does that even come from? And that's it's a really deep question, but I like to think about if you imagine that everything money touches or everything money impacts in our current world today, it's like millions of different things.
Hmm.
Like money impacts music, art, and culture, and politics,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously like markets, what things are made. If you try to look at everything and figure out how money affects it, it would take so long.
Mm.
Like, because you would have to look at everything and it'd be really detailed. And so the best way really to understand it, I think, is to go back at the root to like the most simple properties. And then from the root, you can see how those properties evolve and spread to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's kind of I'm always pulling back in order to understand things or trying to understand things, especially when it comes to money. Uh,
So
were you
was
gonna?
like the U.S. currency, did it just like come about as soon as we became a country, or did we have like currency when like when we first got here or something, or not got here, but like one of the first states was made? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, definitely. Um, and really, we did already have a currency, and mostly all of the currencies in the world at that point in the 1700s were various forms of precious metals, mostly gold and silver.
Yeah, like did the British like is that what they used? Did we get it from them essentially? Like did our economy just morph from whatever they were using across the pond during that time?
Yeah, to some extent, but it even goes back earlier than that
Mm.
because precious metals were actually an advanced money at that point in human history. I mean, to understand money, well, like one thing about young people that they're actually getting nowadays, I'm seeing this meme more and more. The young people kind of get is that money's kind of made up. It's a story. It's just paper, you know, like that's what people say, and there's actually a lot of truth to that. But it's when you understand that story exists to serve a purpose, and that there is certain properties that make something better at being a money than something else, and that money is just meant to exchange. And this actually goes back to even the tribe, where have you ever heard of like division of labor? It's a fancy economic term.
Mm-hmm.
That just means specialization. It means that like if we're in a tribe, if there's enough of us, I can kind of maybe be the more of a hunting specialist, and maybe you
Okay.
can make tools.
Positions. Like
Yeah, exactly. It's like because there's someone helping collect the food, I can now spend more time doing whatever I'm good at.
so like a job.
Yeah, like a
Like the
job.
modern day workforce
Yeah.
at a business.
Yeah, and it's not immediately intuitive that it would be better, like if we have a tribe of 10 people, it's like, would it be better to all of us kind of be generalists and we can kind of dynamically switch between things and mostly we're the same at everything? It's like you think about that versus what if we all specialize in one thing and like go really deep in that one thing? When you first think about it, maybe it's doesn't seem like one would be too much better than the other. But in reality, because humans are like innovative, when we specialize, it's not just that we get really good at something, but we get better at even producing it. Like if you're making shoes, if that's all you do, chances are you'll make better quality shoes, and you'll even be able to make more in a day or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So people like they actually dig in and they increase the productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And once all the 10 people, instead of just like kind of bouncing around and doing the same thing for 1,000 years in a tribe, they're all leaning into their own niche and becoming more productive at it. And it kind of elevates all of them up to a level that wasn't possible before.
Yeah.
And this is something that, children could understand this concept. Like they don't teach it. And it's so important as to why money exists. And so, like, if you imagine that tribe where we're all starting to specialize, you're making shoes and I'm bringing back meat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we then mediate the exchange between stuff? And that's kind of where money comes in. But first, it's free trade because people will just barter and trade. I'll trade you a hunk of meat for a pair of shoes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But as you need to scale that up to more complex transactions or more people transacting, you kind of need something at which everything else can be measured.
Mm.
Right. And I don't know, for me, that's kind of intuitive. It kind of makes sense. Like if we're all doing our own thing in the tribe, we get to about 100 people. It's hard. Maybe the guy making the shoes, maybe you're like,
can't make enough.
yeah. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe there's too many shoes.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
no one needs shoes, and now you need to get like food. You
Now
can't
you
even
need
get food.
socks. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how you get food. You have to innovate, make a
Yeah.
new product.
Right.
No, but all of this kind of tribe example, it kind of, for me, sorry, I think that free trade is kind of intrinsic to nature.
Mm.
Because you can even look at mushrooms or just ecology, like in forests, where there's transactions almost. Or you can think of it as like economic behavior,
Mm-hmm.
where resources are traded.
It's a bartering
And
system.
yeah, exactly, bartered. They're distributed about amongst individual acting species, or in economics, they call them agents, like individual agents, rational agents.
Right.
They say all those things. And so really, like, that's kind of how you can see a market, is like like different individual actors all communicating resources between each other, communicating value between each other.
Right. That's kind
And
of
so,
why I'm trying to get into gardening. I talked about a couple episodes ago, like
yeah,
in just having enough like veggies to be able to just give to people, like if they need it and I need something from them or something that could be of use. It's like, here, I'll give you a whole grocery sack full of tomatoes, like for that shovel or something. I don't know. Like, it seems like the bartering system is gonna, in your opinion, or I guess, yeah, in your opinion, do you think that the bartering system is coming back in a way, or maybe we're about to see something similar?
no, bartering it just doesn't work
Mm.
at a large enough scale. Like maybe you think of all the things that you need, all the products you need in your life, or even electricity.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to barter for each one of those, it just takes too much time, too much effort. Like it's
Yeah.
not productive. Like we can maybe barter 1 or 2% of our transactions that we make. But I think very much that the opposite is going to happen, which this goes to Bitcoin. Like I think we're going to return to a hard money standard, or basically just a standard at which the money itself is independent of anyone else's control or assertion that is money. And it's put in a property that is um, great for transacting value across time and across space.
Mm.
And really at its base, that's what I think a good money does. And this is why gold became the dominant money for thousands of years in the world. It's because it has certain properties that make it just outcompete the other monies. And that's even skipping, far ahead in history, because people used beads, like glass beads, and certain types of seashells, or all sorts of different collectibles as money. Like early on, like in the tribe example again,
Yeah.
you trade for a while, and eventually maybe everyone just starts to count what they trade in a ledger or on a
Mm-hmm.
necklace with like a certain number of beads or something like that. And you can see this across all cultures. Like this is just emergent phenomenon of humans. Like humans eventually, once they start specializing, they create something that mediates that exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look in a broader scope of history, those monies that last and that make the biggest impact and that the most wealth is built on top of, those monies have certain properties. The main one being scarcity, which I think is intuitive to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's scarce is valuable.
And that's
Um,
why Bitcoin is, I mean, for many reasons, but that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin will probably become more valuable in the future, right? Because there's a finite amount.
yeah, yeah. So it's a simple thought experiment. You have a finite amount.
Mm-hmm.
You have to buy some to get some, and so as more people buy it, um, the price goes up. The value of it goes up because there's less and less of it on the market. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin, but each of those Bitcoin can be broken up into 100 million pieces, basically. And so you can buy, a penny's worth of Bitcoin, and it's like, uh, well, like the smallest unit of Bitcoin is called a Satoshi. It's
Mm-hmm.
100 millionth of Bitcoin. And so a penny is probably, I'm not sure, 100 Satoshis or something like that, maybe less. And so there's a lot of room for it to grow
Right.
if you think about that. But yeah, that's one of the main components that gives Bitcoin an advantage. It's absolutely and totally scarce. But there's other things along with it that make
Right.
it
Right.
easy to transact, easy to recognize.
Not
Um,
traceable
yeah, like an
by
open
an
ledger,
outside. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that everyone can read. And so, kind of in economics, what you call Austrian economics, which is
Mm.
like the study of like the fundamentals of economics, the fundamentals of money. Um, they recognize like different properties of money, which are durability, portability, divisibility, uniformity, scarcity, and then recognizability. And those are all like kind of fancy words, but like durability is just strength. Like it won't, like a tomato obviously isn't very durable.
Right.
Portability is how easily you can move it
Mm.
around. Which, if you think about gold,
Yeah.
if like if I'm a millionaire and I'm storing all my money in gold, like $10 million in gold, how much does it cost to move that across the world? Like
Right.
an extreme amount of money. You have to have a security force and like a cargo plane.
Gold is so crazy too because you can like melt
Yeah,
it down. It could easily be like bend and break but it's just wild and there's veins of it in the earth. Like that's just crazy.
yeah.
It's
You can really think about like, yeah, gold is amazing, and it's very logical as to why it became the dominant money. The fact that mentioned durability, like you can't destroy it.
right. You could just
Um,
melt it.
yeah, you can melt it. Another one is divisibility.
Mm.
Like gold you can split it into many different units. You can standardize those units. Those are called like a mint, like
Right.
minting coins. And so there's many reasons as to why it's so valuable, but at the heart of all of those things is the scarcity. Is
Mm.
just the fact that if I'm holding money, you can't go somewhere else and just devalue it.
Right.
If I'm holding gold, you have to really work if you want to get more gold and be able to like if I want to buy a house, I have gold, you want to buy a house, you don't have gold. You can't just go print it. You can't
Right.
just
Right.
go necessarily beg for it. Like maybe you could if you were a prince or something like that, but you would have to work, dig through the earth in order to get it, produce work, just as seemingly I had to produce work to get my gold.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about that that's like fair. Bitcoin embodies this in a mechanism called really proof of work, which is just how it ties the issuance of Bitcoin to producing energy. And it's really cool because it actually ties Bitcoin to the energy grid, which, scarce money representing scarce energy, like makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But
I just looked up real quick the
yeah,
today price of 1 gram of gold. It's about $60.
$60, yeah.
Yeah, an ounce is like almost 2,000.
Yeah. Gold has held its value even in a lot of ways up till today, but you
I was
know,
just curious. I didn't know if I have any gold things. I was like, damn,
yeah.
I could uh, maybe sell some of that.
Well, do you remember like when all of the cash for gold places popped
Oh
up?
yeah.
Like they
Was that
really all started
because
to pop
gold
up.
was super um either like cheap or expensive those years or something or
Well, this was around, at least I really noticed it in Oklahoma, all of these places popping up around 2008,
yeah,
which is around when the financial crisis
right,
happened.
right.
And this is because these are people, starting businesses that have cash and they want to buy gold. And they're
Mm,
basically just saying, I think that this gold is worth more than this cash over the
mm,
long term.
right.
And this is, of course, was when the government was first printing, their first round of a few $100 billion.
Oh.
And a lot of these old gold bugs
Yeah,
were kind of like, oh hell no, like I'm storing all my wealth
right.
in gold, and so
I
you
wonder
kind of
how they're
see that
doing
move.
now.
Well, this goes to where we were talking about lumber,
Okay.
and it's not just lumber though; it's
Mhm.
everything. Um, Kind of everything is being treated like a money now, and I think houses are a good example.
Mhm.
Like house prices have been going up like crazy. I hear people talking about this all the time. Um, just house prices, real estate. Like every one of my coworkers that I talk to at work that own a house, like around here in Utah, I, ask them if, they don't mind. Like, hey, how much do you pay your house? Pay for your house? When did you get it? And they'll tell me like, yeah, I bought it in 2019. I bought it for 300 grand.
Mhm.
And every time I'll say the same thing. I'll be like, oh wow, I bet it's gone up more than 100 grand over the last year.
Mm.
And they're all like, yeah.
Wow.
Everyone, every
That's
time, everyone
insane.
has said so.
Maybe this is the
And
wrong time to buy a house or to be
yeah,
thinking
and
about buying a house. Or maybe it's the right time. I don't know.
yeah, I think, uh, well, you see, like, there's these big hedge funds
Mhm.
like BlackRock. They're buying houses, like single family homes in mass. They've got all this cash, just spending it buying single family homes, and they're just like hodling it.
Mm. Yeah.
Or they're just holding it, bag holding it,
Right.
because as an investment. And you think about this once again, we're kind of abstracted up because we're talking about our current economy.
Mhm.
And me, when I look at that, I think that like people are using houses as money. People are using lumber as money. People are using Pokemon cards
Yeah.
as money. People are going and they're basically throwing their money into all of these different things. Graphics cards.
I'm about to use
Uh,
books as money. I've been looking up how much my books are. I don't want to get rid of some of them, but I have some magic books that I did not realize were like 100, 200. There's one that's
yeah,
I found one technically on Amazon that's 900, but it could just be some crazy nut that's like, this is an occult book. It has the secrets of the earth. And like, he's like, it's
yeah,
only worth $999 or something. I don't know. But
Dude,
I'm
that's
I'm trying to
and
use books.
I bet those books are at an all-time high.
They
Like,
I was
I
actually
bet it's the highest
surprised.
dollar price
I
they've
would
ever been.
Yeah, yeah. And even the cheap ones are like a cheap book that I found that I have that I could sell would be like 15. And that was like a paperback book. So I mean, $15 is not even that bad. Or yeah,
Yeah.
15 bucks for a book. I probably bought it for like 7 or something at a I don't know, half price books or something.
Yeah, and books are like one of those collectibles. Obviously, we know a lot of people that collect records too,
Mhm.
comic books. And seemingly if you have like a book and it's priced really high, like I have a few books as well. I have one book that I bought for like $60. It's worth $200 now.
Nice.
And you know, usually if a book is that expensive, there's some kind of information embedded in the price.
Yeah.
Like price and carries important information, and really price is like emergent information that comes from the intelligence of all of the people in the market.
Mhm.
This is another kind of fundamental Austrian economic concept, that money helps us embed this really important information and distribute it across the world. You know, if the price of oil in a rational world, if the price of oil was skyrocketing, that would send a simple message to everyone that there's not much oil.
Right.
There's less oil. I'm having to pay more
Yeah.
units of my currency for it. That's a rational thought, but if there's people behind the scenes pulling the strings of the underlying money that you're even pricing that oil in, that's a tricky,
Mhm.
that's a sneaky trick, right?
Mhm.
That's like if we're doing all sorts of different calculations with fractions, right? And we're focused on the numerator, like what's on the top line.
Mhm.
And we're trading numerators, like all of us, we're all focused on the numerator. And then someone is sneakily messing with the denominator.
Mm.
They're screwing with our whole game.
Right.
Um, and this is kind of a trick that's just as a money itself is emergent. Fraud is
Yeah,
emergent.
well then they tell you if you vote for this person or that person, then you, the person, we the people have the control over what is and what isn't expensive or not expensive. And that part I can't really wrap my head around that part either. But that's leaning more into the politics of it. But
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it gets political. Like I think that money should be pretty apolitical in the sense that it's just like a
it should be just like
practical.
religion. Religion is practical, money is practical like
Well, yeah, at its base, like just like as well, and this is a great example that people say like it's a good thing that the church and the state are separated.
mhm.
Like the separation of church and state is a good thing. And if you really look into like why that's the case, like you look at history, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself. You know, you can look at the Renaissance,
Mhm.
uh, the sorry, not the Renaissance, I'm thinking the Inquisition,
Oh, yeah.
um, the Dark Ages. You can look at everything that's happened, and you can say that, like, yeah, the powers of the church and the powers of the state being separate, like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And people that argue for Bitcoin, we just say that, like, yeah, the power of money and the power of state, like, it makes sense for those things to be separate.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, like the there's a lot of debate in economics. Like I've been saying, Austrian economics, but the field that's mainly taught in school is called Keynesian economics by
Mm.
this guy Keynes.
Sounds
And
better than
really,
Dave Ramsey.
it's not too much better,
Oh,
sadly.
okay.
Keynesian economics, I'll argue, I'm biased, but it's basically the assertion that we can calculate and quantify everything going on in the economy, and we can create models for it. And then with our models, we can determine, what the balance of inputs and outputs should be, what the prices of things should be.
Mm.
Keynesianism economics is kind of just the assertion that man can quantify the market in its totality and then decide how to control it. In Austrian economics, what I'm interested in, what I've been talking about the whole time, it's more of just a humble look at what has happened and just trying to read the properties out of what has happened rather than say that we know and we're going to control it.
Mm.
And
So like
it's more
just
of a
data
hands-off
analytic,
approach.
like more processing the data that you're getting over years and years of where money goes.
Well, it's more of just seeing what really the properties of money, like I was saying,
Oh,
like
okay.
all those properties of money, like those come from the study of Austrian economics,
Mm.
where you just look at, like a money that lives for 1,000 years. Like, why did gold beat silver? Like,
Right.
because gold and silver were going at each other, and you can zoom all the way in, even to the level of the individual, and you can see how over time the individuals who held the silver, the value of that silver was less than those who held the gold
Mm.
because of the scarcity, and because everyone, once they became money, everyone was trying to get them, and it was
Right.
easier to get silver than it was to get gold. So you can kind of like look throughout history and just kind of pull out these generalities across all of the different monies. But one generality, like I was talking about fraud, is that whenever someone can counterfeit a money or counterfeit someone's value, they take that chance, they take that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly repeatable. There were, like, as Europeans and Spaniards came over to the Americas, they would devalue the monies of different tribes that would use glass beads, for example, where glass was like scarce for them. It was hard to create. It made sense for them. And the Spaniards could just, or the Europeans could just like create it in mass, and they'd bring it over, just shipping money, and the tribes would accept it. And they were basically, just stealing their time by
Yeah.
counterfeiting this money. And that's how I think of the counterfeiting of money, is it's stealing the time, the energy, the life force of the people who work for that money. And so kind of looking at these properties over time, gold wins out, obviously. Like, there's kind of a meme with gold. It's still in us as humans.
Mm.
Like in the Olympics are about to happen in Hong Kong, like the gold medal, that's number one. Or I guess, do they have platinum? They say platinum.
No, I think it's gold still.
Okay.
Silver, gold, bronze, or gold, silver, bronze.
Yeah. Platinum was actually, and they
Was platinum introduced?
I don't know if it was for the Olympics, but
I think that's Mario Kart.
Yeah. Mario Kart,
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that it's in Mario Kart, like, it's kind of a meme, like it's in us. Like,
Right.
gold is valuable, and
It's harder to get. First place is the hardest to get. Gold is the hardest currency to get, technically.
yeah, and really that's where the term hard money comes from. That's basically what hard money means. It means like, I've got something that's hard. Like, I've got something that's scarce,
Difficult to achieve.
hard to get. Yeah, like there's a sense that it's a valuable thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin is trying to replicate all of those properties in the digital realm, and it's done it in a fascinating way. And like this will be kind of an intro episode, I guess, talking about Bitcoin. We can get into the specifics of the technology in Bitcoin in another episode, but
Yeah.
like, it's worth understanding what Bitcoin's even approaching, because people compare it to like Venmo or Cash App, which Venmo and Cash App are like a 19th layer abstraction on top of gold. Like, if you really follow the money all the way down. And so Bitcoin's not going after Venmo.
Right.
Bitcoin's going to the very bottom of the layer, competing with what's there, which is gold.
They're hoping that more and more people invest all their money into their app, essentially, right?
Um,
technically. Like the more money that people have on their app, the more likely they're going to use it.
yeah, no, exactly. It's a closed network,
Mm,
and they make money by fees,
mm,
basically, and
right,
by keeping you in that closed network.
right.
When Bitcoin itself it's an open source network,
Mm-hmm.
and so anyone can build with it, anyone can use the code,
Yeah.
um, and it's very interesting. That makes it indestructible in a way that very few things are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, information, like how indestructible is information? But yeah, have you ever heard the term global reserve currency?
I think I've heard it, but I don't know what it means. I think I've actually heard you say something about it, maybe.
Yeah, probably. That's technically what the dollar is right now. Well, not
Okay.
technically, that is what the dollar is
It's a
right now.
global
It's the
reserve
global reserve currency.
currency. Okay.
Yeah, and this is an important. This can
Does
be,
that mean that it's like does that mean it's one of the most popular forms? Cuz the name doesn't seem like it would. Reserve. Does that
yeah.
is it a backup for something, I guess?
The it's supposed to be the foundation for the whole global
Oh,
economy,
okay.
global reserve currency, which helps paint a picture for where we really are.
Mhm.
But this goes into how the story of gold ended, because we're talking all about gold and why it one is the money and was money for thousands of years. Um, the dollar became the global reserve currency at the end of World War II,
Oh, okay.
and before that, for the for 2,000 years before that, it was gold. Like, this is a pretty interesting shift that happened in the world, and like we don't not very many people learn it in history class. Um, but this touches on one of the weaknesses of gold, which, in short, is that it's heavy. Like we were talking about portability, like it's hard to move around. Gold has a natural effect to it, along with all of these other effects that make it great money. It has a natural effect of kind of centralizing and sitting in one place.
Mm.
Um, it's easy, especially if it holds its value over time. It's easy to kind of just like leave it wherever you've got it. And as America became a dominant power in the early 1900s, you know, there's the rise of banks,
Mhm.
basically, and the classic bank stereotype is like, the vault with the gold in it, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mr. Whatever the cartoon duck jumping into it.
yeah, not McScrooge.
Yeah, so one of them.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the stereotype, and that stereotype, that's where gold died. That's where gold's grave is in the
Yeah,
vault.
in a vault.
Once the gold became more and more centralized in the banks, uh, the governments, regulating the banks and slowly moving around banks in a kind of a regulatory moat. Eventually, something called Executive Order 6102 happens. This is in 19. Let me look it up here. Early 1900s.
Okay.
Pulling up Wikipedia here.
It's like a Empire stormtrooper name.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Executive Order 6102.
What do they call it in Star Wars?
Order
Uh,
66.
Order 66.
Or
Yeah.
something like that.
Think of it in the same terms, because it really is that
So on April
level of
6,
evil.
1993, 5 months before my birthday.
No. April 5th, 1933.
Oh, that's when it was.
Yeah. So this is basically where it becomes illegal in the United States to
Oh, to
hold
hoard
gold.
gold.
Yeah.
Wait, really? So it's still illegal to hoard gold? You mean all this time I
Um,
could have been sticking it to the man by just collecting gold and putting it in my closet?
yeah, no, for real. Can you, isn't that shocking? And isn't it
Yeah,
shocking that you never heard that? It's illegal
a
to hold
certain
gold. I mean,
amount.
this is keep in mind, like people have gold watches and gold chains and stuff like that. This is like gold bullion bars,
Mm,
like certain amounts of gold money. Um, it was confiscated from people, and most of it was already in vaults. And then they confiscate it from people and put it, basically, they give you paper instead. They give
what?
you something that says you can exchange, this paper for your gold when you need it, but we need to keep it in the bank. We need to have our war chest.
So is it so scarce that they know how many gold bars there are?
Yeah, there's a number to it, but that number is inherently flawed.
Mm,
One, because there's lots of reasons to lie about it. Um, and two, because there's gold that's still found.
right.
There's people like I have a friend actually who is up in Washington, and he's into the underground gold scene where people go into rivers and like sift for it and find
Damn.
raw gold, and they
Wow.
just hoard it in their house. They never turn it in. They never tell anyone.
That's
And
sick.
he's telling me that there's old dudes, just out in the mountains that have, millions of dollars worth of raw gold that they're like never going to turn in.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so it's kind of, they see it as a rebellious thing. They're like, I'm holding gold. I'm holding a money that humanity has found valuable outside of the government, for
Hmm.
thousands of years.
Right.
And there's something powerful about it. And that's kind of the ethos of it really attracts me to Bitcoin. It's like that independence of like, I'm storing my time in something that I know can't be devalued, can't be stolen from. And that's the big idea. That's the big value. That's why I think it's important, and that I want my friends, my loved ones to hold it, is
Right.
because I know what's happening today with the money printing. That's, money
Hmm.
printer go burr, never
Hmm.
turns off. Like, it's happened before, and it just comes down to one thing, and that's stealing people's time,
Hmm.
devaluing it slowly.
Yeah,
Uh,
because I mean, we all try to work 40, 50, 60, 80 hour work weeks, so that's a lot of fucking time that you're stealing from us.
yeah.
That's a
Well, you
lot of
think,
goddamn time, actually.
yeah, if you count it up, especially if you count up all the people,
Yeah.
all of those hours. Hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic. This is a story I'm pulling up here on Wikipedia. This was to basically Germany or the Weimar Republic in order to fund World War One. They borrow, instead of adding a tax to people, they just print more money.
Hmm.
So they devalue their own currency, borrowing against it, thinking that they're going to win the war,
Hmm.
and they don't end up winning the war. And then their currency eventually hyperinflates, which you can see what that looks like in chart form. Oops. Um, I'm assuming it isn't working. Yeah, right here. This is what the death of a currency looks like.
Wow.
Is it just the units of it go up in this huge exponential curve, and then eventually people, they just drop it.
Hmm.
People return, like you were talking about barter.
Yeah.
People return to barter because the money is devaluing so fast that there's no point in holding any of it.
Wow.
You can kind of see there's like all these crazy pictures. There's one of like, where's that? Yeah, this one of these kids just stacking,
Stacking it up.
yeah, stacking just like blocks
Fire
of
kindling,
Weimar
basically.
marks.
That's all it
Yeah,
is. Throw them in the fire.
but yeah, so this is like a famous, kind of example of hyperinflation event where government goes nuts, like printing money, borrowing against nothing, with the hopes that they're going to win a war.
Hmm.
And looping back around, that's kind of how the dollar became the world reserve currency, is we did win the war.
Mm. So does that mean basically like whoever wins a war, like a big war, like, are we gonna be, what is it, renminbi or whatever, the Chinese currency? Are we gonna be using that in like the next 10 years or
Wait,
something?
what'd you say, renminbi?
Renminbi or whatever the fuck it
It's the
is.
yen, the
There's
Chinese
two.
yen.
There's two different.
Oh, really? I haven't heard of that
I'm
one.
pretty sure there's two. Let me look. But yeah, is that what that means?
Um, well,
Like
I don't
whoever
know.
wins in a world war, like,
Well, this is what's crazy, is it's only happened once.
mm.
You know,
And
so
that's what's
World War
scary.
II,
Is then I feel like other
yeah.
places are like, well, now we got to do it.
No, yeah, it's definitely, you start thinking of exactly the right thing, is like China. Like, how happy do you think China is that the world reserve currency, the thing that the unit currency that everything else is borrowed in, the denominator for everyone else, they don't control that.
Hmm.
The US controls that denominator, and we're printing it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's even worse. And and when the dollar gets printed, when we have a $6 trillion stimulus because of COVID in the US, and we get stimulus checks, the people in El Salvador who use the dollar, they don't get stimulus checks, but that denominator changed for them all the same, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty unfair.
Yeah.
It's the same for everyone else. And so that's what's so ludicrous about having like a paper world reserve currency that people, human beings, control, a small number of human beings, central bankers.
Right.
And so it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if there was another world war, China won, like, would the yen be the world? I mean, it kind of makes sense, but like it only happened this one time.
Mm-hmm.
And what's even more sneaky is that the dollar was backed by gold when it became the world reserve currency, right? So the dollar was supposed to represent the gold and the volts. And then in the 70s, Nixon, that was the final strike, is in the 70s when the dollar stops being exchangeable for gold. You can no longer go to the bank and exchange your dollars for gold. They just cut the peg. And at that point you're like,
And then in the
you just cut the
90s, they
peg to
make it
reality.
illegal for you to have any of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
So
the
we're
renminbi and the yen are the same thing.
oh,
They're just two different names. The people's renminbi, I don't know why it's called that, and then the yen.
huh. Yeah, I never heard that.
CNY and RMB are the like three acronyms for them.
Yeah.
They're the same amount. They're technically not the same currency. I don't know. I'm getting into a bit deeper hole the more I read.
Yeah.
They have
I've
different
definitely heard
exchange rates, and they're traded in different
that.
amounts. So,
Yeah, so like exchange rates, you can go see what all the value of all the currencies against each other.
mm,
And there's kind of a sense where they're always competing. But at its root, well, you and me, we're gonna at some point, and maybe in a few weeks, we're gonna have an episode about anarchy, because
yeah,
we've both
yep,
been doing some studying. Well, Bitcoin is kind of adjacent to a lot of ideas in anarchy in some ways, but you could think of the relationship between different nations, different nation states. They're in an anarchical relationship. Like, that's the true anarchy at the highest level, because yeah, there's some kind of order. There's the UN, but at the end of the day, like North Korea, they fall outside of the UN.
mm,
Everyone in the world is in an anarchy relationship with North Korea.
yeah,
We are conversing and debating and trading on like real terms with real risk. They might attack us, we might attack them. Like, there's real game theory at play there. And all of the same, if you look at what governments trade
mm,
with each other, yeah, they give out loans and bonds, and sometimes they're paper currency, but really when they're trying to secure value, it's gold. That's
Mm.
what they're trading.
Wow.
So that's kind of the story, and that's the way I think about it, is like, money is this emergent phenomenon. It serves a purpose.
Hmm.
A global money kind of won out by natural means, gold. And there's a lot of ways in which the world thrived with under gold standard, or at least different societies thrived and progressed a lot under gold standard. And then very quickly over this last 100 years, 150 years, you see the story of money change, where all the gold gets hoarded, we get handed money, and
Hmm.
we've already forgotten.
Yeah.
Like, we're already disconnected from what money really means.
Well, we're too busy spending our money that we worked really hard for all week.
Well, yeah, and
Look at all this
borrowing
paper
our
I
money for
have.
free.
Look at look at this video with really loud music playing, and I'm just like throwing money on the ground. Like, look at this in the 80s, like hair metal bands and like classic rock and all that shit.
Yeah.
All they cared about was money, money, money. You
No,
know?
exactly.
Like,
It's like really ingrained in our American culture. But it's like the pursuit of money is.
mm,
It's
yeah.
not like I don't know, a grounding in money or an understanding of it. It's just like this grinding pursuit for more. And there's lots of cultural, so really, once again, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, you think about everything that money touches and
Hmm.
how it can affect those things. Once you consider that maybe the money is broken, and it's broken because it's being controlled by humans, something that was always in the hands of nature being controlled by humans, you start to imagine, like, how much does this really affect? How does this affect people's incentives? What we do, the kinds of things we make, the prices of things. Like, I believe houses should be going down in price.
Hmm.
Like, that's what technology is supposed to do. Technology is supposed to drive prices down by making us more productive. That's what the guy in the tribe who gets better at making shoes, that's what he's doing.
Right, right.
But central banking, Keynesianism economics, where you're constantly expanding the money supply, that's like fighting that force that's supposed to drive down
It
prices.
seems like there's way too many variables in our financial issues, like in this country. Like there's too many like I don't know, too many hands on it the way it gets handled.
Yeah.
And or maybe they're in way too many pockets.
No, it's
Back pockets, way deep in the back.
it's true. Yeah, and you and me, we could legit have a full just conspiracy history of money episode,
Mm.
because it is extremely conspiratorial.
Mm.
Like, where the dollar becomes global reserve currency, that was this event called dude, I always do this on the podcast.
It's all good.
I forgot what it's called. I'm looking it up right now. But there's also where the Federal Reserve is formed. They're formed on Jekyll Island.
Jekyl
Like,
Island.
Jekyll Island,
Oh,
yeah.
Jekyll.
Like Dr. Jekyll and Mr.
Oh,
Hyde.
okay, okay.
And it's just like this crazy private meeting on an island where then the Federal Reserve is created. And the Federal Reserve to this day is the entity that prints more money. They're not even printing it on paper nowadays. They're just putting numbers in the computer.
For
But they're
real?
not actually a part of the government. The Federal Reserve is private. And they're
What?
formed on an island, Jekyll Island. It's crazy. There's a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is all about the formation of the Fed. And
Damn.
so there's all sorts of crazy conspiracies that go back to like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers. And what I was thinking of World War II, that's called Bretton Woods. There's the Bretton Woods Convention.
Okay.
And that's where all of these nations met together after the US nuked Japan and kind of won the war.
Mm.
And we came together, and the US was like, These are our terms, baby. Our money. Y'all are gonna use our money. And
Damn.
that's we live in the post effects of that world, of that Bretton
Right.
Woods world. Like that's been the last 70, 80 years. And so it's crazy when I was learning about this stuff, because I'm learning about this stuff as an adult
Mm-hmm.
trying to study Bitcoin. I was like, holy shit. Why didn't anyone tell me this?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it
Like this
is.
seems
It
like an
is.
important thread.
It's kind of fucked up that like not that many schools touch on this or any financial classes touch on any of these facts. Um, it doesn't make any sense. So that could feed back into the conspiracy easily. Like you could see how someone could really go down a rabbit hole and like everything starts making sense and clicking.
Yeah.
um,
No, and this is kind of the classic gold bug is like those people hoarding gold
oh,
or
that's their
like
reasoning.
physically.
They're like, well, it's all just
Well,
owned by the Rockefellers anyway, so there's gold in them thar hills, and I'm gonna go fucking get it, and now I'm gonna sit on it, and they ain't gonna come get it.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's the mountain gold bugs that like literally go and fish it
Yeah,
out, but there's also just like
the
more
cash for
regular
gold.
investors who like just have the knowledge about how the Fed was created and how central banking works,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they want to exist in a system that's outside of it. And so you can kind of see how like if someone really obsessed about this stuff, it can kind of drive you crazy, which I have a little bit. And it does just shift your perspective on things. But you know, what's happened recently, we're expanding the money supply faster than it's ever been expanded. Over 70% of the US dollars were created in the last 2 years.
Shit.
So it's like a snowball effect as like it goes on, as the show goes on. If you want to have the same effect, for example, stopping a recession, this time you have to print 10x more. And next time you have to print 10x more than the last time. And so, COVID comes around. Well, in 2008, we printed $800 billion, and everyone was like, oh, like it was a big fucking deal. It was a
Right.
big number. And all of the gold bugs were like, this is it. This is the end of the dollar reserve.
Little did
But
they know it was just the beginning
it was just the beginning.
of the
And this
end.
time around, we've printed tens of, well, at least $10 trillion over the last 2 years. So it's like, yeah, it's 10x bigger basically. And so, it's a tragic thing. And when you think that like, also it's the poor people that hold cash. It's the poor people that hold the paper money mostly. It's what they get paid in. They never necessarily invest it. They're always just living paycheck to paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
paying the market prices for rent,
That's
for
me.
food.
That's
Yeah,
me.
and that's been me most of my life as well. But then when you think like rich people, they only keep like 4% of their money in cash, right? Like an investor will say that you're dumb if you tell them like, yeah, I've got 80% of my
Mm-hmm.
portfolios in cash. They'll think you're dumb because it's like, well, you're losing 2 to 5% a year, maybe more if it's a COVID year.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a real. And like also when I realized that, I was like, that's wrong. And it's wrong that this isn't like a common theme that's told to people, that you're really getting poorer
Mm-hmm.
by holding dollars,
Mm-hmm.
or by holding whichever government currency you're holding.
Mm.
All of them do it. Just like I said, like fraud is universal. Like
Right.
all the cultures have participated in it in the past, in history, and it still happens to this day. And so, but yeah, anyway, we jumped around a lot. We jumped around a lot across history, deep history. Those are a lot of the big points.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good
But
foundation to really get started to dive into Bitcoin a little bit. And I mean,
Yeah.
We can even like do a two-parter thing like next week or something, or in 2 weeks, like start kind of scratching the surface of Bitcoin really, and I'm cool with doing that too, and
Yeah, totally.
or
No,
even talk
I'm
more
super
about the
down.
history of money if there's even more to talk about. Like that's what we can open up with, and
Well, it's good. We'll reference back to a lot of
right, right,
things. And
yeah,
that's why it's good to like to first have some kind of context
mm-hmm,
around it. And this is also why Bitcoin is such a hard subject, is because nobody, all of us, we weren't given any kind of an education
right,
of first principles of how to think about money, how to think about value at all, and what it is. And yeah, having these things to reference back to in the Bitcoin conversation is really useful and really important.
mm-hmm,
And really the big mental model for any individual to consider if they should start to learn about Bitcoin, start to think about it, is understanding that Bitcoin's not competing once again with Venmo, with it's not just a new cool tech product, a new app. It's
right,
competing at a much more foundational level of how we price everything in the world, how we recognize value independent of, I don't know, a group of people telling us
right,
what is valuable. And so, that's why it's worth looking into, in my opinion.
mm,
But yeah, we can definitely build on these foundations in some next parts.
yeah, for sure.
But hope I wasn't too ranty on this one.
No, no, you're good. I mean, I don't know a lot about finance. Um, that's why I'm in the position I am. So, I mean,
Well,
I'm down to listen.
it's yeah, like I said at the beginning, it's presented in the worst way, and I was so uninterested in it.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and it's
yeah,
hard
really
too
until
to
discovering
see
Bitcoin.
like the generational wealth that people come from too, like wealth or lack of their, like some people if they come from a lot of money, then they don't really even think about it equally as much as the people who don't come from a lot of money. Because the people
Yeah,
who don't come from a lot of money, like myself, like are just kind of like, well, this is how the fuck it's been for everyone in my life, and I guess this is how it's going to be for me. And then people that come from money seem to kind of think, well, I'm just always going to be able to have money. Is what
yeah.
it is, at least what it seems like from my perspective.
Well, there's a sense going back to the rich dad poor dad thing. Like we didn't have that. Like my dad, my parents weren't. They didn't celebrate money. They didn't. My mom did teach me to be pretty frugal,
Hmm.
but never learned anything about investing. Never even really knew
It
what
was
that
more like a
was.
survival thing. Like,
Yeah, it was just like be practical. Like
right,
don't. It was
right,
more like don't take out debt. That was more
right,
of
right,
the lesson I learned. But like these out of the stereotypical rich kid that we're talking about that kind of gets taught very good lessons about this stuff.
but they
You know,
ignore it.
their dad probably sits them down when they're young and they're like, listen, you don't want to hold money. You want to use your money to buy things that become worth more over time. Like
Hmm.
that's what you want. They tell their kids things like that, and they're always pounding in those lessons and teaching their kids to look for opportunities for profit, basically.
Hmm.
And then poor people, or like how I was raised to focus on things, I'm sure you to an extent, is just you're focused on the money, on getting the money. Like, oh, this
Right.
job is this much. This job, like you can make this much an hour if you're a mechanic.
Yeah.
If you're, like that's good work. Like that was more of the level that I was thinking on, is like,
Right.
maybe one day I can have a job that pays a good amount.
Hmm.
But then if you finally get that job, even a great paying job, but then houses
Hmm.
are going up $100,000 a year.
There's not even a way people can afford houses at 15 an hour. Like,
No way.
there's no fucking way. And I get
Yeah.
paid 13 an hour.
And see,
The only
this is
way
a
I can
tragedy. Is
the only way I can like think of buying a house is getting some type of first time home buyer assistance from something.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why. And that's like depressing.
Totally. And young people should be, like Bitcoin can be a political statement in this way, it being totally scarce. Like young people, we should be upset. The dream of owning a house, it's
Mm-hmm.
running away from us right before our eyes. You can see it running
Right.
away over the last 2 years. The price running way farther than our wages will ever go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so obvious. And it's, oh man, and these media stories about, I saw media stories saying that like the silver lining of inflation, the silver lining is you'll get more raises, or
Yeah.
you'll get paid more. But it's like, what does it matter if I get paid more if a 3-bedroom house in Utah is $600,000?
Right.
Like, and I'm gonna have to be, half a millionaire
Mm-hmm.
in order to ever do that, or I'm gonna be in debt slavery, just like at risk. If I lose my job, I'm gonna lose my house, right?
Right.
And that's, that like that's a tragedy. And I on the opposite ends of things, if you hold Bitcoin, houses are going down
Mm-hmm.
in the cost of that money. And for me, in the long term, that's the only thing I'll ever spend any Bitcoin on, is like that biggest, most important purchase,
Right.
a house or a piece of land or something like that. And that's what I tell my friends. That's what I've told you and tried to tell everyone. Just like buy a little bit, hold it for the long term. Like it's a bet on the
Right.
future,
Yeah.
and we're very early to it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, the houses thing, it's crazy. Like I've got friends I work with. These are people that are working in tech, making the best wages in the economy,
Yeah.
right? And I've got a friend, he's got 2 twin boys. He's like 2 years older than me. And he's just devastated because him and his wife, they're responsible, and they're looking at this reasonable townhome somewhere in Utah, and it just jumped up 100K in a year.
What the fuck?
And now they can't get it. And he's making great money.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, he'll eventually, he'll probably be able to get a house, but like he's
Right.
trying to catch a rabbit right now. He's trying
Yeah.
to catch up with that price that's running away. But then I'm just thinking about like, I work, like you should hear the money complaints that I hear from these people. These are
Yeah.
the people making the best wages.
Right. Right.
And it's like, if these people are feeling this,
Yeah.
like that's just what I'm thinking all the time, is like, the poorest people, the people on the ground. And so anyway, not to further beat that point in, but
No, I
it
mean
really
it's fucked.
is, yeah, it's like we should see it for how it is morally wrong. But just because of the popular takes on economics, this is just considered kind of normal operations, how
Mm-hmm.
things work.
Right.
Um, and so I don't think that's going to be the norm for very long, though. Young people are already waking up, and they're seeing the holes in our money system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man.
Well, I mean, do you have any last thoughts or regards involving money?
I have too many. I gotta shut up. But I'll just say that it's, um, it's always fun to learn new things, and I'm just happy that I found new things that are interesting to learn about, and that I hope that this type of information could be helpful to people.
Yeah, what was you mentioned a book earlier that maybe people could pick up that gives a little insight to your thoughts and the direction that we're heading.
Oh
Um,
yeah, there's
or even like a thread or a website or anything like that.
there's definitely a lot of books. Um, I'll give one book suggestion though, and one website suggestion. Uh, the book suggestion is The Bitcoin Standard by this economist named Saifuddin Ammous, and it's basically a little bit of what I talked about. It's a brief overview of the story of money, how
Mm-hmm.
gold became money,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's an overview of Bitcoin and why he believes that Bitcoin is going to be, you know, the winner, the next winner of the global reserve currency. It's a great book. It just condenses a lot of things that would be a lot of separate, thick books, kind of condenses it into a really neat package.
And what's the title again?
The Bitcoin Standard.
The Bitcoin Standard. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then a quick website to look at is WTF happened in 1971.
Okay.
WTF happened in 1971.com. That's just it's referring to when gold was disconnected to the dollar in 1971. And it's funny, it shows you a series of charts of all of these things that changed after that happened. One of them, you can see wages staying flat while the cost of houses, the cost of school, the cost of everything goes up. And there's all sorts of it doesn't assert anything onto you. It just shows you like, here's raw data, here's raw data, here's raw data. And it all starts in 1971. And it just kind of gives you a glimpse of everything negative.
About 30 or 20 years after World War II.
Yep.
And
yeah. After we are the global reserve currency, we made it like 20 years before we cut ourselves off from gold. Hardly any time, but so those are the two sources I would suggest.
Cool.
Those are good ones I return to often.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah. Y'all.
You heard it here first. Hoard gold in your house.
No, hoard Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin. All right, bye.
Oh, yeah, thanks.